Sometimes I wonder, because last time we talked about, you mentioned in the last episode how it's not really that I'm funny, it's that the only way you can tolerate me is by turning my behavior into something you laugh at.
Yeah.
And I'm beginning to think that might be true. Because you laugh at...
all of your misery.
I tell you, like, I've been limping around all day, and you laugh. And I'm thinking, that's not something a normal person would laugh at. My misery brings you joy.
Oh man, I do feel bad about that. It's just after 20-something years of hearing it kind of, like the other day when I couldn't tell if you were really mad or if you were playing a bit, like it all kind of sounds the same, and I said we need a safe word so I can tell when you're really pissed. It maybe it's nervous laughter. I don't
Probably.
know. Is the volcano about to erupt, sort of a thing?
What do you mean?
I mean, I don't know. That's like, Wait, is he about to blow?
Honestly, there are a lot of times where I'm close to that, but I just turn it fully into something funny, and then I end up laughing at it too, and then it's I diffuse the volcano.
Thanks for that. Most of the time.
Most of the time.
Yeah. Okay, everybody, quiet on the set.
Film Reverie Podcast, take 77.
And action. Hello, Film Reverie listeners. This is Michael Backemeyer, and as always, I'm joined by...
The Balding Ewok. I'm never leaving.
Isn't it fun pretending to be excited about sitting next to me over and over again? Okay. Today we have... we're always really excited to have like local filmmakers on, like because that's one of the reasons we started this show like all those years ago was to like meet more local people, because I realized once I was starting to really double down on trying to get things made, I didn't like know anybody in town anymore, because I'd had like an 8-year hiatus / marriage. They sort of stopped me from working on stuff, and I didn't know anybody anymore. A lot of my friends had moved away, and they were my filmmaking friends, but I was totally not integrated. So it was really, we wanted to meet local people and just keep in touch with what was going on. So today we have Julian Banner and Rachel Comeau. Julian is a writer, producer, director of a new film called Some Southern Waters, right? And Rachel is, of course, the lead actress. And we're hopefully going to be joined by another actor, Bry Reid, in just a minute, but he's having some technical problems. So, okay. So, hello. Oh, there he is. There he is. There he is. Just like us. He was just waiting. He was just waiting for the announcement. He was like, we just... Okay. So, how's it going? How did you guys... Talk a little bit about how you guys met, because, Julian, you're making it's a thesis film, right?
Correct.
Like your master's.
Yes.
Master's in filmmaking. Okay. Talk about that.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, like you said, I'm making a thesis feature-length film for my master's at UCF. It's a 3-year program. And that being said, it's a script that I was working on before then for a while. So it's kind of like, I think maybe 3 years in the making now. But the way that Rachel and Bry got involved was, Bry is a good friend of mine back from high school. He acted in a short film that I made while I was getting my undergrad at UCF. And I felt like I just discovered gold when I saw him act in front of the camera. So I wrote this script for him, essentially. Rachel I discovered through Tim Ritter's film Testament, and first through a short film that I saw her in. And I was just like, totally captivated, as we all are when Rachel appears on screen, and just couldn't take my eyes off of her. So I felt somehow that she was the actress that I was looking for to play this part. It just suddenly it like clicked.
Mm-hmm.
So I was praying that I would be able to get her on, although I was skeptical.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I talked to her at a screening at UCF, and it kind of just went from there. I sent her a script, and luckily she liked it, and she liked her part, I think. So yeah, that's how that happened.
Well, so I'll have you talk a little bit about describe your film a little bit because you're also doing a crowdfund right now on Seed and Spark. So I want you to make sure you
Correct.
talk about that a little bit, and then we'll talk to everybody.
Yeah, I
about
want to talk to the actors first because one of them has to leave.
Yeah, but
so briefly,
yeah.
Okay, so Some Southern Waters is it's a surrealistic mystery film. It's in black and white, and it's about a character named John who's played by Bry. He's a character who's kind of obsessed with 50s culture. He's sort of a modern day greaser. And so that's why we get these sort of 50s vibes from the film, and the fact that it's in black and white, even though it takes place in modern times. And he gets into a car accident with his girlfriend, Mona, who's played by Rachel. And then she dies in the accident, and months later, he meets someone who looks exactly like her, who's also played by Rachel.
Yeah. And so you said in your pitch video, perpetually stuck in a dreamlike 50s something or other.
Yeah.
So is the film like a 50s homage, or is it just him that's sort of out of, like, living in the wrong decade?
Right. So it's in a sense, because most of the film is through his eyes.
Yeah.
We very rarely see, especially very very pure about that in the like last 2/3 of the film. We never see anything that he doesn't see. So in a way, it's like his, like you said, his perpetual loop that he's stuck in, or his false 50s nostalgia. We see it in the aesthetic of the film, which is, to me, a strong reason actually to shoot it in black and white and digitally.
Yeah.
Because it's not real black and white, and so it just goes along with the theme that he's not really in the 50s. So
Right.
I'm totally okay with embracing that digital look for that reason.
I was explaining why you're not shooting on film. It's like, you gotta make it make sense in your head, like
Yeah.
which I've done. So I think technically it's okay because he's not really. Yeah.
Right.
It's cool. It's awesome.
I'm constantly making consolations.
But I want to say that I had two reactions, because at first I saw the digital and I'm like, man, it's so hard to make digital look good. And then you made it look really good.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, that's the best I've seen digital video
Yeah.
be made to look.
Yeah.
So you did a great job with
You
that.
should probably watch. What's the Alfonso Cuarón film that just
Roma.
Roma. You should probably watch Roma then, because that, I'm pretty sure they shot digitally and
Yeah.
it's in black
Definitely.
and white. Yeah, and it's a beautiful movie too. The shot from the back of the movie theater with the light. I don't know if you remember that. I was just like, I kept watching that shot over and over and over again, just because it's just
I was incredibly moved by that film, surprisingly, because I went into it trying to look at it analytically in some way, knowing that they shot it digitally and purposely wanted it to make it look digital for similar reasons. They wanted it to seem like a remembrance of the past, not like manifesting the past itself. And they killed it, and it ended up moving me a lot. And same with Cold War. Cold War was also shot digitally, although they tried to make it look like film.
Yeah, which I haven't seen that one yet. It's the one.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
It's like the one I didn't get to. Okay, so actors, Rachel and Bry. Rachel, just go through and tell us how you got started in acting, filmmaking. Like, what made you want to be an actor?
I make this joke sometimes that I've been acting since I was 3 years old, before I even knew what that word was. I was totally making up stories in my bedroom. I would take my Barbies and like build sets and like hang flashlights from scarves to make spotlights. Me and my best friend, Caitlin, growing up, were making films, like spy films, horror films, cult classics, like spin-offs and stuff like that. So I have always really loved this medium, but I was also very, very terribly shy. So getting me to do it in front of people was very hard. And it was my best friend's mother, who was a drama teacher when I was approaching high school. She really encouraged me, like, to go into drama and to do the plays. She thought I would love it, and so I did it for her, and then I ended up like really liking it. And it wasn't until I went to New York and spent a summer there studying at Stella Adler that I was like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do for as long as I can. So
and you actually left New York to come back here?
Wow.
Yeah, I never wanted to move up to New York. New York there's so many opportunities there, so many great opportunities, but it's a lot of theater, and it's a lot of musical theater primarily. And I wasn't quite sure that was the route that I wanted to go down. So I wanted to come to Orlando, finish up getting my bachelor's, and see what I wanted from there, because I still wasn't sold if I wanted to do theater, if I wanted to do film.
So many times when you're making an indie film and you're putting in like grassroots effort, you end up working with people like the best you can find, and they're also as the actor, they're also working with the best they can find, because everybody's really trying. They need experience, they need practice, all that stuff. So many times I've worked with actors who I knew weren't in love with my script. They wanted experience, and I needed them because I needed experience directing or producing or something like that. But I feel like, at least from talking to you guys a little bit and watching your pitch video, that you guys are all in on the project. Like everybody's mutually in love with it and each other. So that's cool, because that's magic right there. Like, it's so much makes working with people so much better when everybody wants to be there for the same reason. So what drew you to the thing?
Well, I was really hesitant at first, for similar reasons that you kind of just mentioned. I had done a lot of student films, and I felt I had been miscast in a lot of things, and I was working a lot harder to make the character feel real and like truthful to me, and it felt like a disservice to me and to the director and everyone on board. So I was getting a little frustrated with student films. So when Julian approached me, I was very hesitant. I was like, oh God, I don't know if I want to be miscast again. And I finally cracked open the script, and honestly, it's the most shallow reason ever. Got to page 20, found out I was a mermaid, didn't even finish the script. I was totally down. I was like, yes, I get to be like a pretty mermaid. Down. Like,
take a mental note. We need to write more mermaids into our script.
Yes. That's the key.
And it wasn't just, she was a mermaid, she was a femme fatale, and the fact that I got to play two characters, I loved that challenge. I loved that dynamic. No one had asked these things of me before, but they were very much characters that I knew I could do and that I had inside of me. And then I met Bry and Julian in person, and I was just so sold. They were so like wonderful and awkward and like funny, and they just had this insane vision that they were so passionate about. And we were just like, I was just down for the ride, and we like get together and we watch movies for inspiration, and we like talk about this all the time. And
well, you're sort of odd man out. The other two of them have known each other for like 15, like since childhood or something.
Feels that way.
I've weaseled my way into the family.
Yeah,
very
she
well.
has.
Okay, good. It's Bry. So what about you? How did you get started?
So the start was when Julian was finishing up his bachelor's at UCF, and we did a 10-minute short. And I was just living in the house for like, I was passing through, so I was only there for like 6 months or whatever. But in that 6 months, we were just in his garage, like we were in his room, just coming up with ideas for this film in this world that didn't exist, and like this funny character that I would play. And I loved it. It was awesome. It was like a ton of fun. It went really well. And that kind of like artistic style of like working on something like that is like, that's really what's keeping me in it, is like Julian, I'm like the biggest fan of like all of his work. One of his short films I think is my favorite film of all, The Hobbits. And actually, so Julian had told me about Rachel like 6 months before we even met, and he was like, I have an idea for Anna, but it's a long shot, and here we are. So it kind of like keeps amping itself up. It's really cool.
What have you guys? Okay, so you're doing a crowdfund, trying to raise some money so you can make the thing. What have you found to be? Julian? Are you from Orlando?
I'm from South Florida.
Okay.
Or I should say, I grew up in South Florida. I moved to Orlando for school, like 6 years ago or 7 years ago.
So I think what people talk to us about when they read something we wrote or we're trying to make something is that a lot of times that it's refreshing, I guess, that we're not writing like another like horror like slasher movie that is just like all the other slasher movies, or some dumb bro comedy with not a whole lot going on other than just like fart jokes and stupid shit like that. And so it's so much easier to attract people to your thing when it's about something with some substance. Like you attract the right some true artists, I guess, when you are working on something that's got a little something else going on up here, So what have you found to be how did you come to this idea? Was that what you were thinking, or is this just part of your like creative sensibility?
How that come to this script specifically?
Yeah. And have you found that it's easier to communicate or get people on board with you because of, because you said you made several short films too. So.
Right. Yeah. So, so those are relevant to this answer. The script, I don't know exactly how it started, like became a full thing, but I basically made I made these 4 short films during my undergrad at UCF. I would say that they were all more or less kind of instinctually driven as far as the stories. I couldn't give you like a good answer for why I made those. But this feature-length film was in part a challenge I gave to myself to somehow combine those short films and to sort of expand the world of those short films into one cohesive world. So it started with that. And then it was just, once that kernel was in my mind, I was, anytime I would watch a movie, there could be any random thing that gave me inspiration, whether it was narratively or aesthetically or structure or whatever. And it just slowly kind of started forming that way until I had some sort of cohesive script. That being said, I'm on draft 13 currently, so it's constantly evolving. So it is different than what it started as. But to answer your second question, I do think it is a lot easier to get crew and collaborators on board when you do have a strong concept, and also when you have short films and stuff to show so that they understand where you're coming from aesthetically.
Yeah. So it's so hard to balance like art and commerce, you know what I mean? Making a movie that's entertaining, but at the same time making something that you feel passionate about, you know what I mean? It's my struggle in the past 20-something years has been writing things that only satisfied my artistic endeavors and not necessarily. It's like I was talking to our mutual friend Tim Ritter, and he basically at one point he said, "Yeah, I basically abandoned the audience at this point. I'm just worried about like saying what's on my mind, and if they don't like it, fine." It's not like a smug thing. It's like if they don't like it, they don't like it. But I kind of have to do my thing. But art versus commerce is like really a real thing. Like we have to figure out as filmmakers like how to make something that somebody's going to want to watch. But at the same time, we feel like we can express our innermost whatever, like all that stuff that we're constantly digging deeper and deeper for. So do you where do you land in that? Do you feel like that this is have some of that or?
I flip I flip back and forth. Answer for that?
Yeah.
Something I think is really specific to Julian is that he kind of talked about it a little bit just previously, but he's always had style. Like from watching his first film in college, like he knows what he wants it to look like. He knows the feelings that he wants to put out there, and like you can watch each film get a little bit better in the specificity of where he's going and the stories that he wants to tell. And I do and style that like draws you into the piece. But what I think is so special about Some Southern Waters is the protagonist, is John. I think very early on, without giving anything away, he does something, it's so little, but it makes you care about him so much and connect to him so much. And then you're following the story through his eyes, and everything and everyone else is so bizarre. And you feel for him. You're like stuck in this dream. You know, it's all these moments that when you're inside a dream and you can't get to the place that you want to go to, or you can't make a certain amount of money that you need. Like it's all of those fears and anxieties are like amped up. And I think just because you care about John so much from the get-go, you fall into this dream world with him, and it drives you just as insane as it drives John. So, yeah.
I have something like with that last question. First off, I feel like we need the answer from you guys on that one. I think, and Julie can clarify this, but there is like, it's almost like we shift back and forth from like the commerce and then the deepest part creativity. Yep. And like they count or something like that, and it is really finding the balance like right in between that. That I imagine it to be the sweet spot, you know. But I mean, yeah,
it's fun because your film is self-described as Alfred Hitchcock meets David Lynch, and David Lynch is somebody who is, in my opinion, who is brilliant, an artist, but is solely concerned with the artistic effort, you know. But Alfred Hitchcock was a popular, like popcorn movie, and they both made great movies. It's the mesh of those two is really interesting and bizarre. And again, Vertigo, like we were talking about Vertigo. Vertigo is my favorite Hitchcock movie. I get really excited talking about it. Yeah. It's probably like, in my opinion, like his darkest thing. Like his movies were about murder and everything, but it was so internal. The psychology of that character and becoming obsessed, and the way he starts to try to manipulate the new version of that girl into the person he felt like most like he was trying to replace is so fascinating to me and fucked up, but like really deep and heavy for a movie that was made in like 1955, you know. And also a great entertaining story. So
Well, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's funny that you say that because Vertigo was one of his least successful films when it came out.
That's probably why I end up liking it as much because I'm drawn to that shit.
Well, that's why it's, you know, obviously it goes without saying that the financial success of a film is not an indicator of how, you know, its artistic success. With the whole like commerce versus really what the argument is a wide audience versus a narrow audience. I think if you're kind of guaranteed a wide audience, it means that your film is going to get a lot of tickets sold. And so kind of towing that line is the analogy that I always give is it's sort of like a t-shirt company. Bear with me on this one. If you try to, so like for example, what a company like Walmart will do is they will basically make shirt sizes and tailor them in a way where it will fit everyone. And so what ends up happening is that it kind of fits everyone almost, right? It like more or less fits everyone, as opposed to a more expensive brand. They have very specific models that they go off of and tailor them in a very specific way, and they're not going to fit a lot of people, but they are going to fit some people perfectly. So my thought always is, you know, to go on that line, like make something that would be specific for a good amount of group of people, but it's definitely not going to fit the majority of people.
Right. That's a good way to explain it. You answered that well. Like we gave him a couple minutes to think about it, and he knocked that answer out of the park. So, okay. So
I want to ask the actors though, how, because it's very different as far as what they typically would get in a script or a role. So, what kind of work or homework did you have to do to wrap your heads around these characters? And because I mean, it's almost like a dreamlike vision from what I see from the trailer.
Surreal and otherworldly in a way, like dreamlike.
Yeah, I've definitely had to do a lot of thinking about how I make the two women so different.
Yeah.
And for me, Mona, John's girlfriend who passes away, she's the reality. So there's a lot of truth in her, and I approach her the way that I would any part, and seeking out the truest parts of her. And then for Anna, who's the dream and the nightmare, I get to go inside a little bit more to maybe some of my theater background and pull out that kind of like a little bit bigger than life, very dreamlike quality. She's not quite of this earth, and she's not supposed to be.
Yeah.
So I've been swimming around in a mermaid tail to get ready for that.
Lots of research.
Sharpen that skill. You can put that. Now you can put that on your. Now you can put that on your resume. I know actors like those little crazy things to put on their resumes. What about you, Bry?
Well, I mean, I actually, other than that short, I haven't done any acting or even really like considered it as something that I would be like really interested in doing. But I guess after, I think I go about it and, well, yeah, I try to find the parts in my life because Julian like wrote it about me, and I can see how much, I can almost see what he was seeing in me when he was writing that, and so it's kind of putting all of the energy into that kind of emotion and or state of being or something like that. And so it's kind of more of, I mean, I think, I don't know what my homework would be for that. I mean, it's more just mulling it over.
You don't know how to do your homework on how to be yourself?
Well, yeah, so
just keep being yourself, I guess. Just practice being you, which is actually really hard to do. Just be you.
Yeah, it is very hard to do because it's like a raw nerve exposed. You're like, this is me. I hope you like it.
You're real good at it, though, Brad.
I know.
You're unrelenting.
I'm just like, this is me. Deal with it.
So how's crowdfunding?
Crowdfunding is okay. It's going pretty steady. Yeah. We're 33% funded, and we're about halfway.
Well,
so.
Have you done a crowdfund before? Or is this your first?
It is my first.
Yeah. They are soul sucking.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty rough.
Yeah.
But
especially for like the filmmaker, because we're not always the best at sitting in front of the camera and doing the thing.
Right.
It's like I'm more of like behind the, and the self-promotion marketing thing is just not always like.
Yeah.
It's unrelenting. It's every day. It's saying, you didn't do enough today. You got to do something to go live or click a button or email someone. I don't want to do it.
But that's just you every day. That's you every day.
That is me every day.
You didn't do enough today. I can guarantee it.
I didn't yoga or meditate. I didn't do anything. This is it.
It's definitely emotionally exhausting.
Yeah.
It's frustrating because it's a goal that I have very little control over.
Yeah.
And so you end up just basically working on it 24/7 and like strategizing like 24/7 and seeing like what could we do differently? Can we post at different times? Let's look back at the analytics. The analytics are not working for us. It's just like constantly reevaluating. And then at the end of the day, you don't even have control over it.
Just
so it's
barely move one little thing at a time. It's like I worked on this shit for 2 hours and it just like, barely did anything. Yeah.
I'm like, I could have just been working that time and made $20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've done a couple. I mean, I've done a handful. Like, I'm at a 50-50. A couple times they went, and a couple times they didn't go, and it's stressful either way.
Did you use Spark or did you use Kickstarter?
The ones that I had succeed, I did an Indiegogo once, and then I did Kickstarter a couple times, And then we did another Kickstarter, and then we used a Seed and Spark. And the one we did Seed and Spark to was our feature film that we just didn't work. It was after we'd shot the film, and we followed all the advice, and it just didn't. We didn't click. It didn't click. We already had the movie in the can though, so that was good.
So you're just dang.
It's just me and him and my 6-year-old Mac. We
Yeah.
Yeah. We finished it that way.
Oh, okay.
It's a grind, and you never really know what's going to click, and you're in the middle of it, so you definitely can't just go, well, it's not working, and you can't sit there and go, we're doing great, we can sit back. Either way, you just have to, it's a marathon, not a race.
Going down with the ship.
Yeah. That's the director's job anyway, right? Yep.
Well, I'm a mermaid, so.
It's also building the ship. Selling the ship.
Asking for money for the ship.
Yeah. Oh my
God.
It'll float, we promise.
So.
Yeah.
Let's say we just rewatched your pitch video. Footage is fucking beautiful. Great. It's glorious.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Do you do your own cinematography, or do you have?
No, I have so for that pitch video, it depends what portions of it you're talking about. So the interview portion was done by a close friend of mine. Her name's Olivia Wilson. She's a cinematographer. And then the actual footage that we're shooting for the film was DP'd by another friend of mine. His name is Kareem Dakan.
Nice.
So, but they both have worked together a lot, and they're both super talented. But no, I definitely don't do my own cinematography.
The first time I watched your video, I'm like, this is like Vertigo and David Lynch. And then you said, it's like, what if Alfred Hitchcock? And Vertigo is my favorite Alfred Hitchcock movie.
Yeah, I think me too.
Every David Lynch thing is my favorite David Lynch thing.
I know, right?
Blue Velvet or Twin Peaks are probably.
Yeah, I can't pick. People have asked me what my favorite David Lynch film is, and it's like picking your favorite child.
And Rachel's dancing in the thing that the slow motion stuff reminds me so much of Twin Peaks.
Interesting.
Because
a lot of people said that, and I didn't get it, but I'm sure it's in there somewhere.
It's in black and white, and
by the
Twin
way,
Peaks isn't, but it's like she reminds me of I can't remember what's the actor's name that plays Laura Palmer's best friend, the dark hair.
Donna. Yeah, Donna. I don't remember her name, but yeah.
It was that. It's that. She looks like her, and she's like, it's sort of dreamy.
Nice.
Yeah, I fucking loved it. And the shot of him by the pool smoking the cigarette is so cool. Like, you shouldn't smoke, but if you're going to smoke, you should look that cool doing it. You know?
That's really funny.
Bry's many talents, for sure.
Yeah.
Just looking cool while smoking.
Yeah.
Looking cool while doing things you shouldn't be doing,
Yeah.
If you had 30 seconds in an elevator with somebody, what would you tell them about your movie to get them to go to that Seed and Spark page?
Oof, that's the worst question to ask me.
Okay, if you had 3 minutes.
So I would give them like the log line as I've said before. And I think the most important thing that people need to understand is that I think it's a film that is very different than anything that's being made. And a lot of my time is thinking about that and thinking of how to progress the medium of film forward. And thinking that, like, how this film fits into the general landscape of cinema and the history that came before it and stuff like that. So to me, anyone who's interested in cinema in general, this is the kind of films that I think they should be interested in and interested in supporting. And I guess we should throw this out right now. If you want to access the Seed and Spark campaign, somesouthernwaters.com will redirect you to it. But yeah, I mean, that's basically what I would say. I mean, it's going pretty well. We're 33% funded. We've got about 2 weeks left. So it seems the momentum seems to be going pretty steady. I know that these campaigns usually spike on the last week. But yeah, that's about what I would say. And that, we're looking forward to making this film, and unfortunately films are expensive to make, and hopefully everyone can feel like they can be a part of it somehow by donating to it.
You know, another selling point is that he's got pretty people in his roles.
Yeah.
I have been biting my tongue this whole time, saying like, "Well, the lead actors are really hot."
Yeah.
Yeah. We can edit that in, right?
By the way, we burst out laughing watching your pitch video when you said
he was describing the
yeah,
mixture.
Alfred Hitchcock meets David Lynch, and they had a pregnant, had a baby, and raised by Jim Jarmusch, and they just were like, okay, and you said laugh, and you okay, we'll just edit that in later.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny. It really showed like the quirky, weird sense of humor that I guess the three of you combined have, and your laughing was like, I don't think it did not look fake. You like were truly laughing there. Yeah, it was good. You guys were good.
Yeah,
we ran the camera just like a lot, so there is those little aspects of us that is literally just the three of us trying to function together.
That's the beauty of shooting digital.
Yeah, just leave it running.
So so what are your ultimate hopes, dreams, goals for your film, and what do you want people to get out of it when they watch it, and where do you want to see it go after you're done shooting? When are you trying to be done by and all that stuff?
So it's funny, me and Bry, we watched, do you know the film Carnival of Souls?
No.
Nope.
Okay, so me and Bry watched like a double feature last night, which was this movie called Night Tide and this movie called Carnival of Souls, and they're both B horror movies from the 50s, but they have this sort of like they're not great movies, but they are, you know, and because of that, there's something about them that's kind of magical and haunting, and which is why they have sort of a cult following. Yeah. And so they were made like 50 years ago, and so we were talking afterwards, and I'm like, man, if someone can look back at our movie the way I'm looking back at these movies 50 years from now, then I feel like we did our job.
Except not saying that it's not great, not a great movie. You described him as leave out that part.
Well, let's say, I don't know. You know, I think a lot of people would look at those films and say that in a technical sense they aren't great. That being said, I do think we're technically a lot more sound than those films would have been. But yeah, in the same way that I think, I don't know, a lot of people would say that some of David Lynch's films aren't great. Yeah.
I think that right. Well, it's so you're right though, but it's so hard to grade whether what is great when it's something like David Lynch or art. Like what is great? You know
exactly.
What I mean?
Yeah.
It's so much. It really does require the audience member, the viewer, to decide on their own. When I saw Mulholland Drive the first time, I was like, "The fuck." But it did not go away. It camped out right here in my brain for weeks. And his films have that effect on me. Right. Every time. Twin Peaks, I watched Fire Walk with Me so many times that it started to make me to freak me the fuck out. And I did not watch that movie, and I'm not even kidding with you. I watched it one time, like the fifth time in a row, like in a couple of days. I watched it like 5 or 6 times straight, and I turned it off and did not watch it again for 20 years. Damn. It crawled into my brain and fucked with me. Okay. Yeah. But I love that. I love that. That's the type of horror movie I do want to watch, is something that, because I don't care if they can make a loud noise. Anybody can make a loud noise. Not everyone can crawl into my brain and camp out there for 20 years. So I'm actually worried to watch your movie. You know what I mean? Right. So it's interesting what your script giving the actor an opportunity to play dual roles, because I don't know about every filmmaker, but filmmakers, like, that's like sweet spot material for actors. They love that shit. You know what I mean? I recently did the same thing in a script that I wrote. Is basically one scenario played out 4 different ways with different actors, except they're all playing like the same people from alternate storylines and stuff like that, and like alternate threads. And there's just one character in the whole thing that plays the same character in each of the vignettes, basically. And it's actually was fun to write. Like trying that. It's like, okay, so now we get to reinvent this character they're completely different now, but they just have the same little like scenario taking place that sets off like, and it's really is like choice. It's about figuring out like the choices you make lead you in different directions and all kinds of stuff, and not a very sliding doors sort of way, if you remember that movie from the 90s. Anyway, so how did you feel about that when you were writing? Did you have like, was it fun writing, or what were you thinking?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I like the idea of playing with casting just as another element in your film, you know, in the same way that you would play with, you know, a frame rate or, you know, anything like that, you know, same way you play with lenses. I felt it was something that should always be kind of experimented with. So yeah, it was fun doing it, and I finally, like, I felt a little weird about it. Like, I was afraid that it would be cheesy or just take the audience out of it.
Yeah.
But then I watched this film. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I had the same feeling when I was doing that as well. I was like, yeah, is it too heavy? It almost feels heavy-handed, like in a way.
Yeah. But the thing that really put me over the edge, and I was like, no, this is something I can do, is I watched a film by Louis Buñuel, who's also a great surrealistic filmmaker. He made a film called That Obscure Object of Desire. And he almost does the opposite, where it's the same character, but every scene it's played by a different actress.
Interesting. Okay.
And so I was like, all right, if you can do that and get away with it, as long as you lean into it and are confident about it, then, you know, then you can do the opposite for sure.
Just trust your idea. Like, put your whole weight with it. Yeah, that's exactly it. And the more I do this, and the longer I do this, so much of it is about, you can tell if somebody's not comfortable with what they're doing. Like, like with what they're putting in front of the camera or the way they're editing or something, you can tell, because then they'll like, well, maybe we'll try this, and maybe we'll try this. But if you commit to some like really weird shit in the beginning and you like let it go there, the audience will stick with you. Like,
totally.
Like again, it's like depending on what kind of T-shirt what size their T-shirt is, but they will, you know, they'll go down that rabbit hole with you as long as the filmmaker is absolutely certain, like committed, and the actors and all that stuff. If it's committed to the idea, it can at least convey what it's going for. If you're wishy-washy and nervous and you're like, oh, maybe we should throw in a little joke here because we want people to laugh in this part because maybe we've made them too nervous. It's like, no, you're directing a movie that in front of an audience that doesn't exist, and you're trying to imagine or like predict what somebody's going to find entertaining. You just don't know. You can only trust your own sensibilities when you're making a thing and put your weight behind that, because there's no other you out there making movies. It's just you. And nobody's seen that yet, you know. You know, so.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's something that I've been noticing more now in that watching films I love, is that I'm always kind of taken aback by how confident the filmmaker was in their choices. Yeah, that always rings true, and it's just like you said, it's
weird choices too.
Yeah.
Like Lars von Trier, weird. Yeah,
you notice it in people. When someone does something with a lot of confidence, you just trust them, and you trust that they know what they're doing. And I think it's the same exact way with art as a natural expression of humans. Is people like to see a confident vision and a confident voice.
Totally, that's exactly true. You do trust people, and think about it like that. What we're talking about it, and you trust people who seem like they know what they're talking about, or if they have an English accent. Then you trust them. You trust them as well too.
But speaking of trust, how do you, like, you're trusting your film to your friend, to Bry? What qualities about him that make you want to? You made a movie for him.
Yeah.
Right.
Tell us about that.
I think that since me and Bry have known each other for a while, I think one of the best qualities you can have in an actor is just the fact that they're making the same movie as you, and the fact that you're on the same wavelength as them. And me and Bry, I feel like sometimes communicate in a coded way, even if we're not aware of it. We're like, we'll say something that makes no sense, but somehow Bry will understand it, or vice versa.
Yeah.
So I felt I had even though I'm not too conscious of how deep it goes, I felt I had like a very deep understanding of Bry just as a person. And so writing the character was a question of emphasizing those things about him that I found valuable in that character, and then diminishing the other things, that don't fit the character as well. Knowing that going in writing it just made it so much easier to write, and just felt more vivid to me.
Yeah.
Almost, if you
go
don't
ahead.
mind, go back to the question about like the homework, and kind of tying it into what that question was and what Julian said. Like, we'll just have banter, like this creative thought process banter, and we're like, I've always seen it as I project kind of okay ideas. If Julian likes it, he takes it and then makes it a great idea. And like it's cool. It's cool seeing him like build off of that, and in that communication, like about John, about the story, we've been doing it from the beginning, and I think really it's trying to gauge what he saw in me writing John, and then relaying that back to me in like the way that and then being able to act that out in like the way
it's sort of weird, because you have to figure out, okay, this is how this person perceives me, so now I have to act how I am perceived as opposed to how I may perceive myself.
Well, that's just acting. That's acting, though.
Yeah.
Right, it is. It kind of is. It's almost an extreme form of that.
Yeah.
And I think it does add like a healthy pressure to it, that brings out a lot of creative thought as to how to approach a character. I also want to add that we're both musicians. And that to me was very important, because I feel like the way that we collaborate, and the way I see film a lot in general, is very similar to music. And so Bry was someone, to give a music analogy, that I could jam with, and that we won't get lost with each other when we're jamming. So that's a really important quality.
Yeah. It's weird because I also have a music background. I was a music major for a couple of years before I switched over to the other penniless career of filmmaking. I did the same thing. Yeah. And music, even though I have not been I was a trumpet player, and I loved jazz.
Me too.
Okay, awesome. So by the way, it's David Lynch. I guess you know that already. David Lynch.
He plays trumpet?
He's a trumpet player, yeah. In fact,
I didn't know that.
David Lynch has 2 albums out of David Lynch
I have
music.
Listened to I did listen to his album, but I didn't know he played trumpet.
That's him playing the trumpet. In fact, if you watch Twin Peaks Firewalk with Me, he's the one playing the harmony muted trumpet at the beginning over the credit sequence. That's him. Yeah.
No way. I gotta watch that again.
Yeah, check it out. So, but music has informed how I make movies more than anything in the editing, like in cutting. There's always in my mind, whether it's like there's a rhythm to it, and it fucks with me if I can't get it to fit in there. And I will sit there and work for to make me happy, and nobody else is going to notice. Brad isn't going to notice. Nobody else is going to notice, but I'm going to sit there and notice the 2 frames longer because it's not right. The same thing with dialogue. Dialogue is very sing-songy, or for me, some dialogue should be at least. And it has to fit a rhythm and a pattern. If we're not getting it on that rhythm and pattern, and this is my hang-up. This isn't necessarily always the right way to be, but my hang-up is that it's not fitting the right rhythm in my head. And if an actor comes in and puts their own spin on it, sometimes I have to step back and go, what they're doing is good. It's just not fitting in with the song in my mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes the composer I work with loves the fact that I can have a musical discussion with him and know that he knows and he knows I know. Sometimes I feel like I'm being really annoying, like the minor thing, and he's like, could you just leave me fuck alone? Let me score the film, stuff like that. So music, it fits in with your
definitely approach. Yeah, for sure. Like I still consider myself more of a musician than a filmmaker. Although maybe with this film it will change, making a feature-length film. But yeah, I do think in those ways. And it's interesting what you're saying about like acting, about how sometimes the rhythm that you had in your head for that dialogue scene, sometimes you don't even notice you had a specific rhythm until the actor reads it, and you're like, oh wait, that wasn't, like there's a very specific. So it's definitely a line to walk as to, do I like it's the equivalent of music, even though they're not improvising the lines, is like improvising over your melody or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it cool that they add that trill there or that, grace note there?
Sometimes
you know
it
what
is,
I mean?
and sometimes
Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. And that's a really hard thing knowing on set. And it's not just with acting, it's with like any aesthetic decision you make on set. It's like, do I try to adhere to my original vision, or do I fold on this for logistical or any other reasons?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, like the line that expert filmmakers know how to walk.
Yeah. It's interesting. And it is something that I imagine, even though we worship the guy Scorsese or Tarantino, I'm sure they're still dealing with it. Also, it's like a never-ending lesson, However, I do believe that maybe Tarantino is convinced that every decision he's making is the right one every single second.
Yeah,
that's like he's impeccably confident, that works for him all the time, and I don't know. But
that's a great example. Yeah.
But okay, so where are people gonna go to find your thing? You already told them somesouthernwaters.com.
Yes.
What about if they want to follow you guys on like social media or something?
I have an Instagram account that's at Space Ghost with 2 O's. So you feel free to follow me on there, but I'm mainly doing everything through Some Southern Waters. So the Instagram handle and the Facebook handle for that is also Some Southern Waters.
Okay.
So as long as you remember that name, you will find us.
Okay.
Double said that. Some Southern Waters.
Southern Waters. So if you want to, Rachel Comeau had to leave, but if you want to follow her on Instagram, it's by Rachel, RACHEL COMEAU, Rachel Comeau. And she's an actor, and she's on there a lot. She's actually posted a lot of Some Southern Waters stuff recently. The black and white stuff, just like I have to do it one day. I can't wait to make a black and white.
Yeah, it's exciting.
So if you want to get in touch with us, we're Film Reverie Podcast. After all, it's 78 episodes and I messed it up. Film Reverie Podcast at gmail.com. I'm Beckenmeyer on Instagram and Twitter, and this is
the balding Ewok. I can't grow hair.
Balding. No, you can't keep your hair. You
right.
grow hair
in other places. Yes.
All right, that's it. Until next time, everybody, go make something, and we will see you soon.
And stay tuned, right?
Yeah. Hey, thank you guys so much.
Hey,
that was really fun. Thank you guys.
Film Reverie Podcast is a production of Super Mega Ultra Entertainment and is produced by Michael Beckenmeyer and Bradley Kingston. If you're enjoying this podcast, please be sure to leave us a 5-star review in iTunes. And visit filmreverie.com to listen to past episodes, and be sure to click like or subscribe wherever you find us. That's it for this time. We'll see you again next week with another episode of Film Reverie.